Mama, oh mama, I have ascended to higher realms. I am back into the transparent cocoon in which I was born. I'm in the angelic realm, looking over you. Oh mama, don't fret, don't fret. I am in the safe bosom in the realm of our ancestors. I've journeyed this path representing the Fula ways. Time for celebration, mama. Time to dance, time to sing, time to chant, time to drum. It's time to celebrate, mama. I've journeyed in the hellish North America, carrying the traditions of our ancestors. So many, mama, will benefit from our life path and our life journey. Please, mama, don't worry. I live on. I live on. As you see, all of the organizations that are being developed as a result of the sacrifice, I have given my life spirit willingly. Though it was a violent and bloody death, my blood resonates with justice. Yes, mama, pour libations. Call on the Lord of the worlds and our ancestors as we move forward, as we continue to ascend. Yes, mama, it's all right. I'm home. I'm home, mama. Yes, I'm home.
Peace and good dawning, everyone. Yeah, it's just one of those type of rainy dawnings here, you know. But welcome everyone to community, and of course to enlightenment and transformation. My name is Chief Yuya. Well, my name is Yuya, but referred to as Chief Yuya. And I want to welcome all of you who are tuning in live, and of course all of you who are tuning in much later on. I guess in some ways you're still tuning in live, huh? But welcome to this experience. As many of you know, this month we've been dealing with the concept of power, and we're coming to the conclusion of this monthly cycle. And we had our student segment yesterday, which was, in my opinion, it was a great segment, really good segment. I think students had an opportunity to really stretch themselves out a bit. And, I always enjoy listening to the students. Thank you, Brother Crawford. Yeah, we'll see what we can do about that. I always enjoy listening to the students and, vibing in on the things that they have been learning and the things that they're using to grow and to develop. It's always just it's wonderful for me because it's like watching flowers grow. Really, it's like watching flowers blossom, especially when you know where people were when they first came in, and maybe some of the challenges that they were dealing with. And because in my position, and I know a lot of the challenges and struggles that people deal with. They're private challenges and struggles that they may not share publicly, but that we may be working on together privately. So you know the type of vibration that a person comes in with, and when you see them actually applying the work, applying it, and doing what they're supposed to, when you start to see that vibration shift a bit, it's a glorious thing. It really is glorious. So I enjoy the student segments more than anything, because I don't listen to my own segments, but I do enjoy listening to the student segments. So yesterday we had a good build. I feel it was a good build, but there were some questions that came in that I did say that I would address, and unfortunately I didn't grab all of the questions. I guess somehow without realizing it, I guess I didn't copy and paste all of the questions properly, and there was a few in there that didn't get answered that were pretty good. But there was one or two I remembered off of memory, and there was one that I did get. So I'm gonna address the ones that that I was able to recover in that sense and see if we can do something with that. You know, I know today is a national holiday, I guess, in the US. So I always like to I always like to monitor things like that because usually I don't know about the holidays usually until the day of or the day before because most of them I don't pay any attention to, and because I don't have a 9 to 5, I'm not looking forward to, oh, we're getting Friday off or we're getting Monday off. I don't really have that type of experience, so it doesn't really mean that much to me. But I do like to pay attention to who shows up and who doesn't show up. Like sometimes we may do a segment or a show. Like I remember one time we were doing a retreat a couple of years ago, and the day and time of the retreat fell around July 4th. And there was all of this debate, in the back end. And we were saying, well, because I'm just saying, okay, July 4th, let's do it. I'm not thinking anything about it. And, other folks are like, well, it is Independence Day, July 4th. People are not going to be around. They're going to be cooking out and, I don't know, whatever people do July 4th, I guess fireworks and cookouts. I don't know. But they're going to be doing the July 4th things. And for me, it didn't really register. I'm saying, well, why would they be doing July 4th things? That's kind of like the basics. Don't they know we don't do that? Like, you know, and over the years, I've just it's been a good litmus test, to really look at who shows up, despite what society is doing, if it's Christmas or Thanksgiving, Father's Day, Mother's Day, all of these fabricated moments and experiences that we're urged and compelled and socially engineered to participate in the way that this society wants us to participate in them. All of those different things. I always like to pay attention to who really shows up despite, because that says a lot. If your consciousness has to exist around and as an addendum to your commitment and your devotion to the larger society's happenings and basically foreign religious, activities, then it's just good information for me as an instructor. It's good information. Sometimes people are all in when thank you, Brother Crawford. I guess it's acting up again. Sometimes people are all in when it's very easy and convenient to be all in, and then when it's not so easy and convenient, they're all out. So yeah, man, it's just very interesting. So even now I'm noticing and I'm looking, the numbers are lower, considerably lower right now than they usually are on a Monday because it's Memorial Day, and people probably say, "Well, I'm going to sleep in." Normally, maybe I listen to Chief while I'm getting ready for work, or while I'm driving to work, or whatever. But uh, you know, because I don't have to do those things today, I'm going to rest. I'm going to sleep. So it just gives you an idea. It's like a good it's just a good population test, good demographic test to see where people are really at based on what's going on. You know. So yeah, but either way, give thanks and hopefully that cleared things up, Brother Crawford. I don't know if it did or did not. Still breaking up. All right, let's see what's going on. We got the Memorial Day blues here. The breakups. One second. One sec. Okay, so Hopefully that's better. Hopefully that's better. But yeah, man. So like I was saying, and just let me know if it's still breaking up because like I always say, I don't want to go on. I'm going to get ready to answer these questions, and I don't want to start answering, and I'm not actually answering. If you know what I mean. Okay, all clear. Give thanks, strong mind, strong body, fitness. So yeah, so some questions that come in yesterday that I thought were pretty good, and they were coming in while Brother Zach and Brother Charles and Sister Sequoia and Sister Gigi were vibing and building on the air. And I know some of the other ones, some other people had called in, but you called in a little bit too late. So you missed the window. All right, so I know some questions that come in, and there was a lot of activity, so it's very difficult to broadcast and speak and get your thoughts together while at the same time monitoring your chat room. So some things now breaking up without static. Okay. All right, let's see what that's about. I'm breaking up now, but without static. All right, let's see. Um, what about now, Brother Crawford? Yeah, it's giving me a runaround today, huh? Yeah, Blog Talk is, I mean, not Blog Talk. YouTube is working me over today, but I'll wait to hear. I don't want to keep breaking up. Pauses in between your words, huh? All right, let's see something. Give me a second. Um, Let me try to fix that. Give me a second. All right. Let's see. Let's see. That shouldn't really be happening. You know, it's pausing in between my words. It shouldn't really be happening. All right. Yeah. Let me do this. Okay. I notice every time I do a show, you just let me know if it's clear now. Hopefully, it should be clear now. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I notice every time I do a segment and the audio is off in some way, uh, those are the ones that get the most thumbs down. So people really get upset when the audio doesn't come through clearly. Okay, cool. It's clear. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, cool. Yeah, I noticed that. I was looking at that the other day and I said, yeah, whenever there's an audio problem, the shows get thumbs down. So people, that really upsets people, I guess, when the audio doesn't come through clear. They're really upset about that. But okay, so let's get to some of these questions before it starts breaking up again. Um, One of the questions that I remembered off the top was from Diana Williams, and well, Diana Williams' grandmother. And I know she was asking a question about children. I know she was referring to her grandchildren because I've spoken to her. I know she takes care of her grandchildren, but she had asked the question. I guess it's my area, Staten Island, still the same, Chief. Huh? Okay, yeah, it might be you, Brother Anthony, because I got a bunch of people saying it's clear. So if you in Staten Island, right now it's raining outside, man. So it might be something going on with the you know cell phone towers. You know, our grid is so fragile, man. As you probably know, we get a little heat or a little rain, power goes out, cell phone towers go down. you know, we live on a very fragile grid. It's really nonsensical and it's almost insane to rely on it. You know. But yeah, so Sister Diana Williams, she had asked about where do you start with when you're dealing with children, and to give you some context, she was referring to where do you start in terms of teaching, like when you're trying to get into spiritual or higher development with children, where is a good starting point, and I have addressed it before. I think I've done 2 shows on it actually. Indigo Children will be one, but then I have another show that I did, and I think the title of it is Consciousness for Children or something like that. So that question I actually already answered, but I, um, I felt I wanted to. Well, one, it was one of the ones I remember, but I felt I wanted to address it because there's another aspect to it that I know that applies to many people, not just children, right? So this idea of where do we begin? Where do we start? And of course, like the information that I give you, I often tell you guys is very foundational, so um that's why I used to do the shows Foundational Fridays. So I'm giving you a lot of those foundational steps and the foundational understandings because sometimes we have these very warped addictions to not knowing, warped addictions to ego, in a sense where we'll be surrounding ourselves and immersing ourselves in a certain informational environment, and there'll be words and terms that'll be flying around and going around that we just don't get, that we just don't understand, and sometimes we're just too embarrassed to say I don't know what you're talking about. Somebody will say kundalini, somebody will say consciousness, or you'll hear a term like more, or you may hear Akibalan, or you may hear African, or you may hear indigenous or native, and you hear all these different terms and ideas and words, and sometimes we don't really know what they mean. So, but we're too afraid to ask, afraid that maybe we'll be exposed for, being much newer to the environment than we may, really be projecting. So a lot of the information that I've given over the years has been really foundational, like even in Grasping the Root of Divine Power, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. I bring you back to the courting process and mating. How do you? These are some of the questions you should ask when you meet someone. A lot of these different things that one may think or assume uh, people should just know. Well, you should know these things, but we don't know them. Sometimes we ignore, to our detriment, some of the damage that has been done, inside of our own psyches, or to our own psyches. So um, as far as like where you start, and I'm going to explain why I'm bringing that up. Um, but as far as where you start, I've given you a bunch of places to start. Okay, so you have a lot of introductory, or as we might say, rudimentary information right there off the top. Okay. All right, let me get some vibes going. No, I don't want that one. That's too smooth. Here we go. All right. So I know a lot of times you guys can't hear the background music, but I like a little rhythm driving me when I'm talking sometimes. So yeah, so all of what you've been exposed to in that sense through the work is foundational. It is, where do we begin, right? But here's the important thing. Now, and I'm answering. I don't see her in the chat right now, so she may still be, getting herself together, whatever. But Sister Diana, plus her school, her grandchildren are probably out of school, so they may all be sleeping in today. But when you're dealing with youth, or even when you're dealing with yourself, where you begin is where you begin. You gotta really understand what I'm saying when I say that. Where you begin is where you choose to begin. You see, no one can really tell you where you're supposed to start. Or sometimes people say, well, Chief, tell me what books I should start with, or this or that and that. I mean, people, I shouldn't say no one can tell you. Yeah, you can be told. I can tell you where to start. Read this, read that, read that, read that. But the truth is, this is your journey. So you have to be able to make decisions. You know, if you're given a bunch of foundational things that are in front of you, you have to be able to make the decision as to where do I want to put my foot down first. And you know, it's almost like the zodiacal, you know, aspects. You're dealing with the will. So either way, you're going to cover the whole will, but you make a decision. Am I going to start in Scorpio? Am I going to start in Cancer? Am I going to start in Aquarius? Am I going to start in Virgo, Pisces, wherever? But you have to make that choice. So the truth is, you know, people can sell you kits and packages and tell you, listen, you know, self-development, you know, in 30 days, or self-development, these are the first 3 steps that everyone must take in order to self-actualize or self-realize, or to achieve personal development, so forth and so on, right? There's no such thing. I have to tell you that there's no such thing. You make that decision of where you're going to begin. Like, I have, you know, over 500 shows that you can, or segments that you can listen to. Now, which ones do you start at? You could start at the beginning, because I mean, I ordered them a certain way for a certain reason. I brought you through a certain track. I did that for a reason. So if you notice, the very first show in Enlightenment Training, you can go right down, go to Blog Talk and look at the first show on the list. The very first show is the Ori. That's the very first show. I dealt with your head. And then after that, I dealt with the gatekeeper. I think that was like the second or third show. The thing, I did 2 shows on Ori, self-conscious. Then the third show I ever did on, you know, publicly like this, was on the gatekeepers. And then I built up from there. So all of that was intentional. However, it doesn't mean that you have to start from the beginning, you know, or you don't have to start from my beginning. Let me put it that way. This is where you have an opportunity to take ownership of your journey. You see, when you can say, listen, you know, yeah, I know I need all of this stuff, and I'm gonna get all of this stuff, but it's more intuitive for me to start here, or it's more intuitive for me to start there. You see, so it's your role, it's your journey. No one can tell you where you're supposed to begin. Now, as it pertains to your children, you know, and I'm basing it on the question that Diana asked in terms of children. And like I said, I know she was referring to her grandchildren, and I know, like Sister Marva, and you know, a lot of you have grandchildren. You know, you've kind of come into some information, and you want maybe your daughters or your sons are not on the same vibe, but you spend a lot of time with your grandchildren, and you want to make sure that maybe you give them what you didn't give, you know, your sons and daughters. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. So I would say this when it pertains to children, and again, I'm going to reiterate, please listen to what I'm saying, because I know a lot of times when I give you a certain, you know, precursor, you ignore the precursor. And then if I say, but here's something you can do, and that's the only part you listen to. So really listen to the precursor that I said. Where you decide to start is where you decide to start. No one can intelligently make that decision for you. I can't intelligently make that decision for you. I can't. And you might say, what about our new spiritual training? And you notice I never push my classes. If you ever really listen to the shows, I don't sit here and say, and that's why you need to join my classes, just $99.99. And you know what I mean? I don't do any of that stuff, because that may not be your start. Your start may be a book. Your start may be one of the classes that Kim has done on the site on crystals or meditation, or, you know, alchemy, or oils. That may be your starting point. Or your starting point may be, you know, I don't know, shrine and altar, you know, or listening to a set of shows. Because honestly, if you listen to these segments, if you really dive into these segments and all the information that's being given to you, it's like it would be like going to college. You know, honestly, if you really, really dived into them, really, really listened, dissected, sat with your pen and paper, and really took it on as a student, it would be like going to college. Now, when you get into our new spiritual training, of course, the concepts are deeper, of course, but and they're explained more, and you know, you have activities that help to bring out the deeper aspects and meanings of the information and things like that. All right. So, you know, all of that is present. All of that is available. So, but what I'm saying is that where you start is where you choose to start. Now, as it pertains to children, you can't determine where children should start. You can't. As much as you may want to, you can't say, well, all my children are going to start here or this, that. You're going to, because at that point, you're basically just giving them dogma. You're basically giving them training. So you might as well, I mean, that's what they get in school every day. First grade, everybody learns this. Second grade, everybody learns that. Third, you know, and if you don't all learn it at the same time, then we say that you're slow, or we put you in remedial courses because you can't keep up with everyone else. But maybe it's not that they can't keep up. Maybe they've already passed everybody else. You know, so they're starting at a different point on the circle of information, you know, or of training, really. That's what you're getting anyway. So the point I'm saying is that that question comes up a lot, you know, so that's why, like I said, I've done shows on them, but I'm going to, you know, I'm directly addressing that actual question that comes up very often. Where do I begin? There's so much information. This is overwhelming. You begin where you choose to begin. Just begin. Just do something. Just begin. Wherever you choose to be is fine. You see? But just make sure you get the whole of it. You know, you may eat your peach from the top. You may eat it from the side. You may eat it from the bottom. You know, or you may eat your grapes by first peeling off the skin, eating the skin, and then, you know, eating the flesh of the grape and then eating the seed. Or you may cut the grape in half and eat the seed first and then eat the flesh and then eat the skin. It doesn't really matter where you start, but eat the whole of it. Eat all the grape, seed and all. You see? So that's the key. You know, that's the key right there. You know, start wherever you choose to start, man. I can't determine that for you. And I won't. Now I could give you a starting point that would work for you and this and that, but a lot of thought and energy goes behind every presentation that you get, from Kim's classes to our new spiritual training, to these segments, to the books that I write, to even the little short little videos I do on Instagram or, you know, on the other YouTube channels, even those little 1-minute videos that this thought that goes behind all it, and nothing is slapped together. So anything that you get, you know, anything that is presented to you, it's going to be valuable. It's, you know, none of it is just throwaway. That's some throwaway information. Let me throw it at them. You know, none of it is that. So you could darn near put your foot down anywhere and get something of value, get something good. All right. So I'm going to start you there, you know, and I'm going to say this: when you're dealing with children, I'm going to give you some suggested starts. Now, please, you see how long I belabored on my first point. I did that for a reason, because I know when I say I'm gonna give you some then that's when everybody listens. Listen to everything I said prior to. Everything I just finished saying is more important than what I'm about to say. All right. So I want you to get that. Everything I just said was the meat of what needed to be said. What I'm gonna say next is it's just addendum. So here's where I suggest you start with children, even yourself, even. But you know, again, I'm addressing the question that was presented. Start with communication. Talk to them, listen to them. That's it. Start there. Because let me tell you something. You won't know what to even intuitively or intelligently do for them until you listen to each one of them. Children are different. Each child is different. Some children seem like they are just not interested in anything. And in some children, whatever you put in front of them, they're very fertile. They jump right on it. You see, but the ones who seem like they're not interested in anything, you just have to learn how to communicate with them. They may have a different way of communicating what's important to them, or, you know, a different time when they do it. And sometimes we don't pick up on their times. You know, sometimes when youth are most annoying is when they communicate the most. When are they most annoying? When they're hyper, jumping all over the place and dancing all around you. Come do this with me. Come do that with me. Look at this. Look at that. They're all. And you're saying, would you just sit down? Sometimes in those moments, you can get the most honest conversation out of them. You see, and it may just be little one words here and there. Communicating with your youth is the most important thing. You're communicating with me. What should I do for them? I'm not them. If you're a grandparent or whatever, I don't know those children. You know them better than I know them. I don't know them. Now, can I do certain things psychically and stuff? Yeah, but that takes energy. I'm not doing all that. So I know some people have this thought like that. Like I'm always psychically plugged in to everyone. And I'm not. I've had people say that to me before. Well, you know what's going on with me. I guess I don't even have to tell you. It's kind of a very self-centered approach. I got my own stuff going on. I'm not thinking about y'all. Or just because you may have a dream about me doesn't mean I'm dreaming about you. Especially considering that you get to hear and see more of me than I hear and see more of you. I don't know what half of you look like, but you've seen videos of me. You've seen pictures of me. You've heard my voice at different frequencies, and whether I'm relaxed or, a little pumped up, doing libations, speaking different languages. You have all of these different angles of me. I don't have that stuff of you. For the most part, with most of you, I have an avatar picture and a little bit of dialogue. And for some of you, I don't even have that. So your children better than I do. All right. So you have to communicate with them. That's the key. Talk to them. See where they're at. Communicate. And if they're not good at communicating, teach them how to communicate. That's your start. Teach them how to communicate, because that will take you, miles in terms of your journey, in terms of their journey, if they just know how to speak and communicate, and they're not afraid to communicate, if they know that they can talk to you about anything. That will take things far. Okay, so start there. Communication. Another suggestion, again, these are not the definitive steps to self-actualization for children. There's no such thing. Okay. Another thing you could do in that sense is, like, once you teach your youth how to communicate and you guys have some good open dialogue. And again, like I said, learn the times of communication. Not everybody wants to communicate at the same time. You may be a dawning person, but your youth may not be. You may have some youth that like to talk when nobody's around, when all the other youth are not around. And then you may have some who like to grandstand, and they only like to talk when everybody's around. So you have to kind of get a sense of their vibration in that sense, right? So communication is key. And then what they eat. You can't do any of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of self-actualizing, in terms of personal development or spirit communication, any of that stuff, if you have a poor eating regimen. You just can't. It's not going to work. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. Because when we look at actualizing or development or growth, personal growth, and all those things, a lot of times we limit it to where we are spiritually or where we are psychologically, emotionally. Sometimes we forget that all of our components grow at the same time. So if you have a weak body, you're gonna have a weak mind. If you have a weak mind, you're gonna have a weak spirit. They all function hand in hand. So eating, get them on a proper food regimen. You see all these things that I'm suggesting, again, not definitive steps. All of these things that I'm suggesting to you, what they truly are and naturally are, just really you're opening up their seals, you're opening up their portals to figure out where they really should be starting. But you're not going to be able to figure that out if the diet is bad, if or the eating regimen is bad, I should say. If they have food addictions, it's not going to work. Start with the food, and just even in the food, there's certain dialogue that can happen. Now, if your eating regimen isn't correct, because I hear that from so many people who, You know, say, well, Chief, I want to learn. I want to this, I want to that. But I got to get my diet in order. Well, until you get your diet in order, let's stop talking about all this other stuff. If you already know what you're supposed to do, get on that. Stop trying to skip around it. See, these are the rudiments. This is the foundational stuff, man. If this stuff ain't right, nothing else is going to work. So where do you start with your children? Communicate with them. Or where can you start, I should say, with your children? Communicate with them. Listen to them. A lot of times we don't listen. We're so used to being trained that we feel like we have to train them too. Communicate with them. Feed them properly. You know, designate times where you take them out of the media circle cold turkey. You know, hey man, you're gonna turn off the well, I can't even say TV because I don't think people watch TV too much anymore, but you're gonna get offline. Let's say it like that. Turn your phone off, turn your tablets off, or this, that. You know, all that stuff shuts down. You know, a lot of times with youth, they're constantly plugged in. They wake up in the dawning, you know, they go bathroom, they have their phones with them. They take their phones in the bathroom to get ready. They're pumping music, dumb music, while they're brushing their teeth and taking showers. You know, then they have the music as they're walking to school or wherever they go. They have stupidity being pumped into their ears, and it's just very low vibrational. You know, so what happens is they begin to develop certain addictions on the low vibrations. So and also when they're constantly around all those electronics like that, they're hyperstimulated. So now when you come with some meditation or whatever it is that you want to talk about, it's just boring to them. They don't want to do it. It's too boring because they're so hyperstimulated. You have to now top whatever their experience is. They're watching some videos on Snapchat or wherever, and you know, somebody's falling or somebody's fighting in the streets or somebody's just doing something funny, and then there's music, and then there's this. And while they're watching that, somebody's also texting them at the same time, and then they're doing FaceTime sessions with their friends. So it's just all this hyper stimulation. And then you may also have that combined with a bad eating regimen, a poor eating regimen. You see, stimulation and addiction. So now you come along and say, hey, you guys look at these crystals with me, or let's smell some oils together. And they're looking at you like, grandma, grandpa, that's boring. I don't want to do that. That's boring. You know, they're just not engaged as you're doing. They're looking off to the side, or they're texting while you're talking, or looking at their phone, you know, stuff like that. And then, of course, you end up getting angry, you know. So learning how to cut those things off cold turkey are important, you know, at certain times. And if you can cut them off cold turkey completely, that's even better. Get rid of the TVs and the radio, all that. But, you know, sometimes it's a little bit difficult, especially as a grandparent, because a lot of times you don't have those children full time. So whatever it is you're giving them and teaching them, it's not going to be substantiated when they get back home. But at least they can have a moment, you know, or to their other home, I should say, when they get to their other home. So at least you can have a moment and a time where it is sacred, it is sanctified, where you bring their stimulation levels down. Okay, so that's one thing. And again, these are suggestions. You know, I'm urging you again that these are suggestions. I know some of you are tuning in late. Most people do tune in late. I urge you to go back to the beginning of this show, you know, whether when you're done or whatever, and listen to the prelude that I offered to, you know, the content that I'm sharing right now in this moment. You know, so yeah, get their eating right. Get their eating right. Communicate with them. Start to shut down the modalities of hyperstimulation that are in their lives. You know, get them into nature a bit more. You know, and when I speak about the eating, also that means incorporating just physicality as on a whole. You know, exercising with them. You know, and I know as grandparents, maybe you know you don't move like you used to, but you can definitely, you know, you could be a drill sergeant. You can say, okay, you guys are gonna do some jumping jacks. You guys are gonna do some push-ups. You guys are gonna run, or we're gonna go for a walk or whatever it is. But get the body moving, you know, in that sense. And obviously that means that you may need to model some of that. So maybe you have to get your eating correct. Maybe you have to get off of your addictions of low vibrational media and entertainment content and you know, all those different things like that. Maybe you have to up and improve your communication skills. Because a lot of times what we're trying to create in our children, our grandchildren, are items and constitutes that we don't have inside of ourselves. So we may have to step up our own personal game. That may become critical in that sense. So those are some very basic things that you can do. But again, you might not do any of those things because maybe your children are already, or your grandchildren are already eating correctly. Maybe you already do have great communication between you. Maybe you already have removed all the TVs and you don't have Wi-Fi in your home and things like that, and you don't allow phone. Maybe you've already done all of that. You see, I don't know your situation. That's what I'm saying. You have to make the choice as a self-actualizing being. You have to make the choice and say, okay, let me decide where we're going to begin, where we're going to start. And I know you have a 1,000,001 online gurus that will sell you your steps. Start here. You need to meditate. You need to do yoga. You need to get those children initiated. You need to get readings. You need to, don't believe the hype. That's all I have to tell you. And don't believe the hype. Okay. You have to make the choice, man. No one can do it for you. That's the key. No one can do this for you. And a lot of times people want things spoon-fed so much. I'll give you another example of a question, not a question, but a comment about the show that I did recently dealing with Kronos and Saturn and breaking down that mythology. And like I said, I'm just going to give a cursory understanding of it. And there was a comment that came, it was a cool comment. Sister was like, why aren't you going to go deeper into it? I wish you would have went deeper into it. No, I went deep enough. Because she said something. I'm gonna try to pull a comment, matter of fact, because I think it was a very relevant comment, and I meant to comment on it. I just haven't gotten a chance yet. It's been real hectic past few days, but let me see. I'm gonna pull it up right now while we're on the air. And the reason I'm pulling it up is because maybe without her knowing, it was a good comment. But I don't know if she knew it was a good comment in the way that it was. So she said, Beautiful Jackson said, who I know who that is, cool sister. Beautiful Jackson said, what is this? ? Chief, you're just gonna arouse me with this topic. Stop and walk away. Please do another show on myths plus a separate on Saturn. I will hit replay for now, take notes, and dig in the dirt for myself. Okay. So that was a comment that the sister had left on the video, right? Now, when she said, you're going to arouse me with this topic and walk away. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm supposed to do. Now it's up to you. I brought it to you. I started breaking things down, and, I'm not going to spoon feed you. So you're aroused now. Good. So now you're interested. You're intrigued by the actual topic. So now you take what you got and then you go dig into it further. But I gave you the direction. I gave you the light. I told you where to go look. I even gave you, because even if I tell you guys something from a cursory perspective, I think you've realized by now that I'm still going to drop some gems on you. I'm not just going to say, hey, Saturn's a planet and then go to something else. Even if I say Saturn is a planet, I'm going to break down the word Saturn. I'm going to break down the word planet. Then I'm going to show you how they intermingle with each other. Then I might even show you how that relates to your body. Then I'll go on. You're going to get something more, But the bottom line is, this is your journey. You have to do the work. So what she said was, I'm going to take notes from now. And, yes, that's, you got it. She said, I will hit replay for now, take notes, and dig in the dirt for myself. That's it. When she said, I will take notes and dig in the dirt for myself, that's all I could ask. Because you have to do it for yourself. You have to uncover things for yourself and walk through your own doorways and your own gateways. And doing that, when you're digging and you're scraping the surfaces yourself, what will happen is you'll start to get a better understanding of what it is that you are required to know, or where it is that you want to begin. You see, because if I just say Saturn, there's so many places to hit that from. You could deal with the rings, you could deal with the gases, that make up the planet, which are significant. You know, it's mineral mass. There's so many different things. It's relationship to the sun. It's relationship to other planets. You know, the moons around Saturn. You know, there's so many different things that you can hit on just by looking at certain things, right? But that may not be the thing. You may want to look at something else. You may want to look at Saturnalia and look at the rings and say, oh, the rings represent the halo that we always see around different divine figures, and you know, that's the halo. Oh, okay. So you might get into that. So when you dig for yourself, you start to pull up the information, even unbeknownst to you. A lot of times you begin to pull up the information that the spirits that work with you most want you to be exposed to. But as a teacher and a guide and an instructor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in the room. You see? So it's like taking you to a museum, and there's different rooms in a museum. I'm going to take you to the room and say, this is the room. This is a good room to be in. But I'm not going to go from exhibit to break everything down for you. So I'm not going to do a separate show on Saturn, and I'm not going to do a separate show on the mythology. No, I did enough already. You do a show. You do the show. I'm not here for all that. So I put you in the room. Now you break it down. You go further. So, you know, that's in relationship to that question, you know, where do I begin with children? Where do we start? This is your journey. I've already put you, and I've opened up some beautiful rooms for you already. Just look at the show titles. Look at the things that we've covered. I've covered mythology. I've talked to you about Krishna, about Lakshmi, about Orisha, about Lawal, you know, about Necharu. I've, you know, there's so many chambers. Then let's not even forget the psychological aspects that I've brought up, the emotional development, letting go, and things like that. You know, I've showed you the rooms in the museum. Now it's up to you to decide if you're going to go into them and which ones you're going to go into. But I've given you all the good stuff. And then you have to, like the sister said, take notes and dig for yourself. So it's the same thing when you're working with children. You know, you have to communicate with those children and kind of determine to some degree what they're communicating to you in terms of where they want to begin, or the things that they want to learn, or things that they want to do. And that may require you to step things up yourself. That may require that. You see, but if I gave you a start here, start here, start there, that would be pointless, because again, I don't know those children. I don't know. And most likely I don't want to know them. And keep it real with you. I don't, they're your grandchildren. I got enough children that I take care of. Matter of fact, today I got to go send some money grand now to Tanzania, you know, to some youth I take care of out there. I got enough children on my plate. Those are your children. I don't need them. I don't, you know, because sometimes people will say that, well, Chief, I want you to come and meet my no. I'm doing it through you, through proxy. See, this is what a man does, especially if it's a woman. I'm giving you the light so that you can give to them. You know, because there's a lot usually that men have going on. They don't have time like that. You see, but I've given you the rooms, man. You got over 500 rooms you could go in and say, I could start here, I could start here, I could start here. He's talked about sex magic on certain shows. He's talked about, you know, it's all here. Elements. You see, so that's what I mean, you know, when I say that you start, or you begin where you choose to begin. You have to take that onus on yourself. Self-actualizing, you know, it's not something that's done necessarily collectively. You know, we may all join a class together, or we may all hike together, go through nature, or ritualize together, but the awakening and the inner explosion happens individually. You see, so it's the same thing when you're working with children. It's a very individual thing, you know, but your job as a parent or even a grandparent is to communicate with those youth. So I would suggest, again, suggestions, start with communication. You make sure your communication is up to par, and you teach them how to communicate. Pay attention to what they're eating, and fix it as you can. Don't use the excuse that, well, I feed them as well as I can, but then when they go back home to their parents, they eat whatever they want. Well, that's just what it is then. Do what you can. Or when they're at my home, I don't let them watch TV or use their phones or things like that. But when they go home, okay, well, do what you can. Children need to understand that certain places are sacred. You see, certain places are sacred. Just like if you ride public transportation, most public transportation, you'll have signs that say, like on buses, please no cell phones, things like that. No eating on the bus. Because this isn't so. Certain environments will require certain kinds of behavior, certain forms of governance. So when they come into your home, even if you're, your grandparent, and you may only have them for a few hours a day, for them to recognize that there has to be a shift in energy is very powerful. It's very valuable. So you do what you can in that sense. It doesn't have to be always a full-time thing in terms of what you're doing, right? So another thing is getting their minds together, dealing with the psychological information. Same way that I deal with psychology with you all a lot. Because if you don't have at least half a mind, at least half a brain, you're not going to be able to deal with these concepts in a way where you're going to be able to utilize them properly, because you're going to always be going to the abstract if you haven't dealt with that. And again, you guys hear me say that that's a huge issue. Huge issue in our community. There's a lot of undiagnosed psychological issues that people are walking with, not to mention the emotional trauma. And then what they do, because they can't fit in anywhere, they find this community or these networks of consciousness. And in these networks of consciousness, they can hide, or they can perpetuate some of these psychological issues as a deeper level of spiritual connection. And sometimes it is that, but oftentimes it isn't. They're just psychologically and emotionally disarranged. You see, but they can come here and say, well, I dress like this, or I don't bathe, or, I just talk to myself, or I sometimes I just black out and I just have fights with people because of my sense of justice. In an environment where there's a lack of regulation, anything can be presented and marketed as acceptable. And that's not right. So, dealing with children, deal with psychology. Start to learn their minds and teach them how minds work, and why people make certain decisions that they make, and maybe why they like certain decisions. Ask them about, well, what makes you say that? Why did you think that? Or, get them into more critical thinking, so they can start to see and learn their own thought process. Things like that. Introduce them to sciences such as debate, where they actually have to debate a point and think about it, and, emotionalism. Because, sometimes children, especially in this day and time when we live in a very effeminized society, everyone is taught to use hyper emotionalism in order to win debates or win discussions, male or female alike. Whoever yells the most or cries the most wins. And that's not going to cut it. So these are just some of the small things. Again, and I reiterate suggestions, because no one can tell you where to begin. No one can tell your children or your grandchildren where to begin. No one knows them like you know them. Maybe their parents do, of course, but there's a different and special relationship that exists between grandchild and grandparent. We all know that, because as grandparents, you see the best in that child, no matter what. You see the best in them. It's a little different. And a lot of times you're not burdened with the day-to-day task of raising them, which kind of wears you out. There may be a burden at times, but, a lot of times the day-to-day doesn't break you down as much as it does the parents. Sometimes the parents are just completely depleted. So when you get to go to grandma or grandpa's, it's all fun. So sometimes in that fun and that bliss, children will open up even more. They'll open up a bit more than they normally or usually would. All right. So that's what I would say to that. Get their minds right. And And on a personal level, for all of you adults listening who are asking those same type of questions at times, where do I begin? Where do I start? Sometimes as adults, because we live in such a high demanding environment, and we're always, on the border and on the edge of hypertension and ulcers and high blood pressure and strokes, because we're so oppressed and by the demands that we put upon ourselves. Retreats are excellent for adults. Spiritual retreats. Now I'm going to explain something about that though. When I say spiritual retreats, I don't necessarily mean like an new retreat where we're all getting together and building as a family and so forth and so on. I'm talking about personal retreats. That's one of the things that a lot of people are so terrified to do, to go into the woods by themselves, or to go in the canyon by themselves, or to even hike by themselves. Personal solo retreats are very powerful. Go camping by yourself, male or female alike. And I know you're gonna say, well, women shouldn't be out in the woods alone. Well, women shouldn't do a lot of things, and sometimes the things that we perceive as convention are the things that are keeping us from really growing. But even if you don't camp out, if you just go for a walk, or you take some time to yourself, you might even go to a spa retreat by yourself. You might vacation by yourself. But retreating by yourself is very powerful, or with yourself, I should say, rather. Let me fix that language. Not by yourself, with yourself. You see, that's a very powerful thing to do in terms of, because that will help you to determine, where do I begin? And that may be your beginning. That may be your first step into consciousness, or your first step into personal self-awareness. In some cultures, that's necessary for young people going through puberty. They go on those spirit walks like that. And then when they come back, they have a revelation. And part of what they come back, the revelation of, is not only of who and what their spiritual and maybe even animal allies are, but what their purpose and role is to be within their community. But it's a personal journey, because no one can do it for them. You see, they don't go to the village or the town shaman and say, oh, great shaman, what are my first steps into consciousness? I don't know, but here, this is what you do. We're going to give you this bear skin, and you're going to go out into the middle of the woods and keep walking until you find out. Just keep walking until you figure it out. So that's kind of the key there, man. In terms of our development, we have to learn to kind of start to take on some things unto ourselves, and not always look for people to engage with us, because I've seen people really truly hold themselves back from experiences that could be very powerful, because they didn't have anybody to go with them. I want to go to India and go wash in the river, but my girlfriend, she canceled out at the last minute. Okay, what's it got to do with her? It's a huge river. It's going to be a lot of other people there that you may even meet. But aside from that, it's for you, isn't it? So a lot of times as adults, man, those personal retreats are very powerful. And of course, you could do that with your youth as well. You've often heard me say, when you get children into a more natural environment, you see some of the greatest things come out of them. In a more natural environment, you take them away from the block, especially those who are a little older and used to that block addiction. A lot of times we're working and we're functioning within certain addictive behaviors that keep us from really ascending, not only as young people, but as adults as well. We have, like you always hear me talk about hard protocols and soft protocols, right? Soft protocol would be something like, stay away from my car, stop sitting on my car, or something like that. And I'm telling you, and a harder protocol would be like, putting your car inside of a fence, building a fence around your car so people can't get anywhere near it. There would be a hard protocol. So a lot of times, even within our own psyche of addictions, we have soft addictions, we have hard addictions. And in the same sense, sometimes we have a little bit of trouble with certain mentalities, certain addictive mentalities that keep springing up all the time, and that really block us from thinking where we should be thinking. I know some people are just completely addicted to misery. No matter what you talk about, it always comes back to a miserable place. They always fall to their lowest vibration, no matter what it is that you're saying, no matter what you're talking about. If you say, well, you could do this or you could do that, whatever is the lowest thing to do, that's the one they're always going to pick. So that's a soft addiction in many senses. A lot of times when we come into higher consciousness, a higher spirituality, especially as it pertains to children, going back again to the original question, we become, very condemning of their behaviors, of their culture and their practices. And that becomes an addiction. As soon as, they play their music, turn that mess off. The way they wear their clothes, pull your pants up, stop showing so much of your cleavage. What are y'all watching on TV? This is some foolishness. We kind of, and that becomes an addiction. We always feel like we have to, we might even see them, they didn't do anything wrong, and we'll see them and just twist up our face like, what are y'all up to? It's just sitting there, So we kind of get into these addictive practices, that keep us from growing, that keep us from really developing. So in the same instance, when you're looking at your children and you're learning to communicate with them, you want to look at some of the same practices that they may have that are very addictive in that sense. Like I said, some children, as soon as they wake up, they're playing music, like garbage music. Now, again, we may say, well, you need to listen to some of the oldies. Well, they want to listen to that. Or you want you to listen to some conscious music. Well, because it doesn't sound as good as this music. Let's be honest about it. We can't listen to dub all the time. So, but sometimes they're addicted to certain things as soon as they get up, or that's one of the beauties of experiencing a fast, or any type of sacrifice, or the relinquishing of certain things that we think we need, and doing that with children, because you get to kind of see their addictions and their cravings come out. You can identify them right in the moment. You might do a 3-day fast with your youth, or even a 1-day fast, even, and they could be an hour or two into the fast and be going crazy, crying, I'm hungry, I'm crying. But in any other day, you might say, but sometimes you wouldn't have even eaten breakfast by now. So what are you talking about? But I'm so hungry. So you see, they may have those fears that you're not going to feed me again. I'm never going to eat again. You see, or whatever it is that they're fasting from, I've had youth before that I've had to take things away from that they really didn't need, and they burst into tears, because their tablet got taken away from them for a day, or a phone. You're not going to have this phone for 7 days. Go on berserk. So you start to get a sense of where the addictions lie, and sometimes the addictions are in the foods. Sometimes they're in the behaviors. Like I said, sometimes we have those lighter addictions, addiction light, where we become very addicted to piousness. We become addicted to self-righteousness. We become addicted to complaining, or addicted to misery, or addicted to low vibrational thoughts and the projection of such, you see. And those block our path. So when we're looking at first steps, these are just, again, some of the suggestions of things that would be advantageous to look at. But again, there are no predefined first steps, and anyone who gives you a predefined set of first steps does not know what they're doing. It's very easy to make up some stuff and then put in big, bold, impact font lettering, first steps to the truth, or first steps to being your best you. Of course, you're going to click on it. You're going to watch that, or you're going to buy that, or you're going to listen to that. Of course, because a lot of us are looking for shortcuts. All right, I don't want all that. Just tell me how to do it. There's no such thing as that. And those who are looking for shortcuts always end up hurting themselves later. This journey in terms of development, whether you're working with children or you're working with yourself, I've had people before who have had problems with their children and have said, Chief, I just want you to talk to him. Maybe if you just, if you could just talk to him and kind of get his mind right. And I tell him, like, if, depending on the problems that we're talking about, A 1 hour or a 30-minute phone call is not going to fix any of that. You know, it may give the child another perspective of this or that, but sometimes even the adults are used to very quick fixes, and they lack the stamina that's necessary to raise balanced children. It takes stamina. It takes devotion. It takes commitment. You know, sometimes people think this stuff comes so easy. I'll give you an example. My youth were talking about this recently. And one of my youth in his activity, he actually starting to develop some level of sponsorship. So, you know, he was given a iPhone, and when he showed it to his friends, you know, it was for boxing, and his friends were like, "Man, I wish," because one of his friends had started with him, but he quit, which I knew was going. I saw that coming. Big giant boy, and I said, "Yeah, he's used to intimidating everyone, but the first time he gets hit hard, he's going to jump out that ring and never come back," which happened. So his friend was like, "Oh man, I should have stuck with it. If I would have stuck with it, I would have had a phone." You see, and my youth was offended by that. And he was like, "You know, Baba, like, they don't understand like how hard I work." And I said, "That's okay. Most people won't understand how hard you work. They'll only see you at the fight. And because you train like you do, you make it look easy. You see, so they'll say, 'Man, if I just would have hung around, I would have did this or I would have did that.' Not understanding that, no, maybe the talent wasn't in you. You see, and the bottom line is you didn't hang around." So, you know, it's the same thing when you're dealing with actualization. I've had people I know come up to me. A friend of mine actually not too long ago was like, "Yo, man, so you still doing?" Because I was on my way to doing a lecture, and he said, "Man, you still doing that speaking thing, man?" He was like, "Yo, man, hook me up with that. You need to hook me up with that." I said, "What do you mean hook you up with that? There's no hookup. Like, you think I work for somebody or something? Like I'm gonna give you a job reference? There's no hookup." And he was like, "Yeah, but you know," I was like, "You know, you got," I told him, I said, "You got to have some topics. You got to have something that you can talk about, and you can talk about, you know, thoroughly, and maybe even field 30 to 40 minutes of questions on that particular topic." And then, you know, he brought up something that was like real light that, you know, no one would really care about. But I was like, okay, you know, I didn't say that to him. I was like, okay, well, you know, start to develop some language around that. And I gave him, and this was all, I'm walking to my vehicle, getting ready to go somewhere. And I gave him a layout. I said, this is how you lay it out, you know, boom, boom, boom. This is how you speak, you know, see if you can, you know, try to hold that conversation, speak about it for 45 minutes, this and that. And, you know, and he was like, "Yeah, but I'm saying, yo, you need to hook me up with what you doing though." And I said, "I just told you what I'm doing. I'm telling you, you know, where you can, how you can get into it, you know." And he didn't want to hear that. Like, I could see that, like, his whole energy dropped, because a lot of times people don't realize what it takes to do what other people do. Like I said, whether it be um, a sports activity, whether it be actualization, um, depending on the level that you're at, there's a lot of time and energy that goes into it, and resources. You see, so when you're asking questions like that, like, where do I begin with my children and things like that, man? I'm, for those of you coming in late, I'm going to reiterate. I don't keep reiterating. Make sure you listen to the beginning of the segment, you know, because everything I'm saying now is less important than what I said in the beginning. But you start where you choose to start, and waiting for your first steps reveals that you never wanted to start to begin with. You never wanted to do anything to begin with. If you're still I'm waiting for Chief to get back to me and to tell me where I should begin, that means you didn't want to do anything. You see, no different than that zodiacal circle. You know, thank you, Strong Mind, Strong Body Fitness. No different than that zodiacal circle. You know, you make an intelligent determination, you know, as to where you're going to begin on that, you know, on that rotational wheel. But you got to go around the whole wheel, and that requires commitment and dedication and focus. You know, even to do what I do. I mean, I almost wish I would have counted and documented the amount of hours that has gone into this, but a lot. You know, a brother said something to me the other day, and he said, you know, Chief, I really appreciate your flow. And he was like, man, you do shows every day, and it's like you just have all this information that just flows from you. Your flow is incredible. Well, you know, I thanked him, but I wasn't born with that. You know, that didn't come when I one day decided, was like, hey, I'm going to be conscious, and all of a sudden all this information just started spilling from me. I mean, it came from hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of study and practice and development and meditation, you know, and grueling physical experiences and grueling emotional experiences, and you know, and loss and hurt and tears, crying, you know, and blood being shed, and you know, so there's a lot that comes to it. Now, of course, by the time you see it, it's like when you look at LeBron James play back, it looks easy. You know, but that's what an expert is going to do, or a professional. He's going to make something that's very, or she is going to make something that's very difficult look very easy, you know, very simple. But there's a lot that comes with it. So, you know, when you're asking what are those first steps, man, if you can open up those seals that I spoke about earlier, it will help you to put those hours in, or help your youth to understand process, commitment. When you say, hey, we're going to fast, you know, maybe once every once every 14 days, we're going to fast for 1 day. You know, something easy like that, you know, that children can do. You know, and it may not be an all-day fast. It may, you know, be between a certain hour, you know, amount of hours, or maybe you're going to fast from, you know, like I said, media or something like that. But you may do that, right? And you may say, okay, and you know, we're going to change our eating regimen. We're going to change our fitness regimen. We're going to start dealing with more of the mind, and how we're thinking, and things like that. And you start digging into that a little bit more. Now you're teaching your children process, you see, because you never know where they may want to go in life, but wherever they may want to go, it's going to require commitment and time. That's just the rules that this world works on, you know. And other folks or other young people may not respect that. Like I said, with my youth, and his friends saying, oh, I should have stayed. I would have got a sponsor. No, I got a sponsor because I'm nice with my hands, because not just because I hung around, stayed around, but because I'm actually good at what I do. And I've been working hard. So he was rewarded. You know, we got him, you know, he got a phone, you know, and there's other things that will come as time goes if he sticks with it. You see, so it's the same thing. You know, you teach your youth process in that sense, man. You know, that's one of the greatest things I could say. But like I said, going back to the previous statement, there are no first steps to consciousness. There are no corporate, you know, predefined first steps to consciousness. They do not exist. I know people will tell you that they do. They don't. People will tell you start with yoga. People will tell you to start with education. Oh, here's the good one. Start with money, because if you can't get your money right, you can't get nothing right. That's another good one. People will tell you to start with your relationships. None of that stuff is you know, predefined. It may not be for you. I tell you another good one that again, suggestion. These are not definitive. Another good one, when you're, you know, asking that question, where do I start with my children? Teach them how to breathe. Teach them how to breathe properly. You know, they do it all the time, but most of the time they're probably doing it wrong. You know, and again, if you're not eating properly and you're not breathing properly, then you're not seeing properly. I don't know if any of you have ever had these. So I don't, you know, I like nature. So I spend a lot of time in nature. But if any of you have ever had the opportunity to, you know, be in an environment where the air is cleaner, where there's maybe a lot of vegetation, or you're just getting away from the smog, you may have noticed, I don't know, but your vision changes. You know, colors become more vivid. For those of us who live in the north, you may have noticed that if you ever drive to the southern states, or even fly, the moment you get off the plane, you look around, you notice everything looks different. You know, and I mean in terms of your ability to process the colors and even the depth of objects. You start to see things differently because you're breathing better. You see, you're breathing better. And when you breathe better, you actually can see better. You know, so things like that, you know, teach them how to breathe properly. Teach them how to take nice deep breaths when needed. You know, sometimes we take very short breaths, or children also have a bad habit of holding their breaths a lot when they're doing something strenuous. You know, teach them how to breathe, or, you know, where to breathe from when they're contracting or when they're expanding. Simple stuff, right? You could do that from your chair. You don't have to get into any big thing. You know, you could do that. Just, all right, we're going to work on our breathing, and it'll be fun for them. I mean, and I'm going to tell you one of the advantages of breathing as well, or teaching them how to breathe properly as well, is that there are certain highs that they can experience through different forms of breathing. You see, so if you teach your children basically how to use their breathing to push them beyond their conscious mind, you know, into a higher realm, or to an alternative modality of thought, they'll be less inclined or less excited about drug abuse later as they get older, because they've already been high. They've already experienced the high, and they didn't have to spend any money to do it. You know, so you start getting them into them places, and also it helps with the addictions as well. Proper breathing, it helps them to break those addictions. You know, you teach them how to align their spines, things like that. You know, now, you know, there's nothing that I'm saying is like it's abstract. You know, I'm not telling you to have them study different religious theories and things like that. That comes later. You don't need to be teaching your children religion or spirituality until they're grown. I'll be honest with you. I've said it before. I'm gonna say it again. Now, that's me saying that. That's my suggestion. You do what you want, but I suggest, you know, not to they're 14, 15, 16 years old. At that point, they're adults. You know, I know we don't see them as that, but they are. 14, 15, 16 years old, where they can reason intelligently. Then you can introduce some of those things to them. But, you know, what I like to introduce is the dogma breakers first, because they would have already heard about certain things from their friends and things like that. So at that age, you can, you know, or maybe even a little earlier, you can teach them about some of the true roots of some of the wisdom and the philosophy that comes from different spiritual systems. You see, because there in all of them, there's some kind of wisdom you're going to find, but a lot of times the majority of it is just dogmatic meandering. You know, and when you're young and you have less filters, you'll take on a lot of that dogmatic, you know, wasteful meandering, and you'll take it on as truth, and live it in a way where you become very frustrated with yourself later on in life when you realize that it was nothing really to it. You see. So yeah, I would just say that, man, you know, in reference to that question of where do we begin with children? Who knows other than you? And really other than them. And the only way you know it is when you talk to them. But I don't know. No online guru knows. No school psychologist knows. Or supposed school psychologist. No psychotherapist knows. None of them know. The only way we'll know is by talking to your children and asking them where they want to start. You got to communicate. That's the only way we're going to know. And you have to respect the answers that they give you. You have to listen to them and respect what they're saying to you, because they're, you know, what you may think is the highest vibration of knowing, 5-10 years from now, you may realize that you were wrong. That wasn't it. You were wrong. Some of us, for instance, are very aimed and directed and targeted towards anything that's African, you know, and I'm using that term conceptually, African. But then as we grow and we learn more about migratory patterns and, you know, even the science of Pangea, you know, or the existence of Pangea, and the African presence in Europe and so many other places, we start to realize like, oh, okay, well, there are other noble cultures around the world, and there are things to learn from these other noble cultures. So maybe I need to be teaching them about, how to be global inhabitants and global sovereigns, not just, citizens, but global sovereigns. And maybe I shouldn't localize them to one landmass, because in essence, in doing that, I'm robbing them. So sometimes, a lot of times, we end up creating a ceiling over our youth's head because we give them what we think they should have. And there's really no such thing as that. You got to open up their seals. And obviously your seals have to be opened up in order for you to do that. If you're still struggling with certain things, love your children enough, or your grandchildren enough, or your nieces and your nephews enough to overcome some of your own demons. At least enough to teach, or at least enough to share, as we go through this life, man. Like, a lot of times people will ask me questions like, when I teach self-actualization, they'll say, well, are you self-actualized? No, I'm not self-actualized. I'm self-actualizing. Because you're learning, and you're growing as you're doing it. You're actually learning more about yourself. As you're opening up your seals, they become wider and wider and wider. But it doesn't stop. It's it moves into infinitum. So there's no idea here that, or there shouldn't be an idea that you self-actualize and then you're done with your work, and then you just kind of walk through the planet as a guru. It doesn't work like that. We're all on a journey, and those blood, sweat, and tears that I referenced earlier, I'm still going through. I'm still studying, a tremendous amount of information and taking it in every single day, just through different mediums. At one point years ago, I only had books, or books and maybe talking to people and things like that. And now, thankfully, because of the advances in technology, I have so many other ways that I can take in information. I can put my headset in and listen to things on my phone, while I'm walking, or, watch a documentary every single day, because there's so many now media outlets now where you can find all of this old stuff and you can watch it. So, and then of course I'm still reading a lot of books all the time, so yeah, it's an ongoing project. It's an ongoing life development project in that sense, man. I got one more question I'm going to answer before I get out of here. This one, I'm not sure who posted it, because I copied and pasted a little bit. Like I said, I missed a lot of the questions yesterday. I copied and pasted incorrectly, but I have some here, or one here. I'm not sure who posted. I think it was either Gina Lacey or IAmDevine. And it says, Chief said, in order to our vibration and fix a broken Ori, we had to elevate our Shiva and de-escalate our Shakti. Is suppression of our emotions one way to balance them? Okay. I didn't actually say that. So I don't know if whoever posted that is listening. I'm not sure, because I don't have the name next to it. But these, like I said, when I copy and pasted, I did it wrong, so I actually didn't get the whole. Usually I just copy and paste the whole chat, and then I dig through it later the next day or whatever. But it says, Chief said, in order to I'm gonna think maybe fix our vibration. In order to fix our vibration and fix a broken Ori, quote unquote, we had to elevate our Shiva and de-escalate our Shakti. It's suppression of our emotions one way to balance them. Okay, so to elevate your Shiva and to de-escalate your Shakti is not necessarily, if you're looking at one being more important than the other. Well, you didn't say that, so let me not assume. Your consciousness has to guide and direct your power. Okay, so fixing a broken Ori, or in order to align your vibration, comes through the development of character. So that that's not so much related to your balance between your authority or the balance between your consciousness and your power, essentially because your aura exists within your consciousness. So that's that aspect. So it would be more like a balancing between your ori and your oriara. You know, it would be more like a balance between those two, you know, as opposed to Shiva and Shakti being a balance between consciousness and power, or knowledge and power, you know. So it's a little bit different in that sense. In terms of elevating your Shiva and de-escalating your Shakti, you can elevate them both in a sense. You know, it's really about the interplay, how each one of them is working with each other in a sense. You know, sometimes we'll look at that if you say something like, well, the masculine leads the feminine, because we live in a very perverted and sick environment where we have intentional aggressive campaigns to distort the sexes and the genders. As soon as you say something like that, people will say, yeah, but one is not more important than the other, because sometimes people tend to listen through their addictions, or they listen through their emotions, you see. So, you know, they're working hand in hand. When we say that the male leads the female, because everybody wants to be in the front. You know, everybody says, well, I want to be in the front. Well, you don't want to be in the front when you're on a roller coaster, you know, or when you want a water ride, because, you know, people in the front get splashed the most. So you might not want to be on the front there. So would you say in that instance that, okay, well, the people sitting in the front of the roller coaster got the best spot? You know, not necessarily. So it's the same thing when you're looking at life. I know it seems like a very simplistic example, but a lot of times when we use the ideation of lead or follow, we're locking ourselves into a master slave scenario, or a master slave mentality. Even when we say words like submission, I've heard women say things like this: you just want me to be submissive and dumb. Well, you can't submit and be dumb. It wouldn't work. You know, because if you're submitting or submitting and you're coming under the plan, that means you have to have knowledge of a plan. So you wouldn't be able to be dumb. If you're dumb, you can't submit. You'd be all over the place, because you'd be disordered and ignorant. You know, so sometimes, again, people listen to things emotionally because they've been trained and programmed to, but it's only people who are disempowered and impoverished that give those type of thoughts or ideas or responses. And I know you didn't, whoever asked the question, but I'm just, you know, a lot of times, sadly, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of sick of it. I have to give disclaimers all of the time because of how foolish people are. And this happens because I'm also speaking in a public format. You know, this is YouTube. When I finally at some point have another way to share, I won't do any of that, the constant disclaiming, you know. Now the second part of the question was, is suppression of our emotions one way to balance them? No, absolutely not. Again, you want to look at the line of travel when you're dealing with energy. You know, you're going from soul to spirit to thought to emotion to action. Okay. So you don't want to suppress, you don't want anything in that line to become a bottleneck. You know, you don't want to suppress your emotions and create a bottleneck, because what happens at some point, you'll have emotional outbursts, you'll have emotional blows, because you're containing energy in that sense. So you don't necessarily, I see what you're kind of doing here. You're correlating emotions to the shakti, because we're talking about it being a feminine expression, but men have emotions too, or the masculine energy has emotions too, because emotions are just energy in motion, you see. So, or electricity in motion, you know. So suppressing your emotions doesn't balance out anything. It just causes an imbalance. In fact, you know, as opposed to looking to de-escalate or to suppress, look to and unleash and empower. So if you unleash your emotions, but at the same time empower your Shiva energy or empower your consciousness, then you create you create the balance. See, sometimes even in relationships, we're trying to dumb ourselves down to be with certain people. Like you always hear me say, like, no, any woman that I'm with, I far surpass them. far. You know, and I've had sisters say that sometimes. Well, you know, I'm just not on your level. Of course you're not on my level. You'll never be on my level. That's the whole point. How can I lead you if we're on the same level? And that means we're going to be sitting here arguing because we're seeing things at the same perspectives. Then I'm not qualified to lead you. I tell sisters that all the time. If you want to buck back and argue, get with someone who you won't argue with. Because obviously some way along the lines, you know, either you are or you think you are just as smart as I am. So therefore, I'm not qualified. You see, because there's no way you're going to submit to someone who you think is either beneath you or on the same level as you are. You see, so it's the same ideation there, and in that sense, it's the same concept that we're working with. If you are a powerful woman, and I'm going to relate that to the shakti to give you just an example, then you don't, and you find a shiva that you like, or a man that you like, or a consciousness that you like, but that consciousness does not have the capacity and the force to corral in your shakti or the corral in your own power. You don't suppress your power just so you can be with that shiva. You find a shiva or a consciousness or a masculine energy that can actually that can stand over you enough to corral in your energy. You see, so you never suppress, you never dumb down. You don't do that, because that's depleting. That's extremely tiring. That's depleting. Trust me, you know, that's depleting. And I see another part here where it says, Chief, when starting with a broken ori, are you not starting with belief? Question mark. Until you are truly balanced with your ori and have knowledge. Is this correct? Okay. Now, I noticed when I had given that belief breakdown in the show that someone, I think it was Sister Glenda Holder, because she was the one who first put it up when I corrected it or taught her, and she broke it down further for me after I already explained it. That's what keeps you stuck. And that's a prime example. If you use a word and I'm showing you you have a misunderstanding of that word. And I wish I still had that. I lost it, but I wish I still had it there, because she went to later explain that further down in the list. If I break it down to you and you still come back and say, okay, well, let me explain it different, this is what I'm saying, then I'm not the one to teach you. Because obviously somehow you think that you have to explain something to me. I'm not the teacher for you. You got to go to someone who, if you use the word belief and they say, okay, that's good, and you know, you either agree with it or they say that's bad, and let me show you why it's bad, and they break it down, and you still and you're able to say, okay, I see that, then that's what you want to work with. You see, that's what you want to work with. Like, I know what I said was absolutely correct and on point. I know what you said was absolutely off point and incorrect. But no true teacher is going to argue or try to fight with you to teach you or to help you. You have to understand that. And that happens so often. You know, people do that all the time. And you guys have heard it on the call-ins, which is one of the reasons why I don't do the call-ins anymore. I'll explain something, explain it thoroughly. Person will come back and say, all right, well, maybe I didn't explain it clearly. Let me break it down. No, you just heard an answer that you didn't want to hear. You wanted people to agree with you. You didn't know what you was talking about. And you don't want to hear or be reminded that you don't know what you're talking about. So, you know, that's an example of the Shiva and Shakti relationship. Maybe you found a consciousness or a Shiva that is not really on your frequency, or projecting at a frequency that you can understand. You know, a lot of times, again, people have the ideation. You know, you got to understand, especially me as a man, and I've shared this before, I'm always a man. No matter the environment, no matter who the person is, I'm always a man. You see, so when I say something, that's it. Now, I know we don't live in that type of environment. I know, because I'm supposed to be effeminized, you know, especially as it pertains to communicating with women. You know, I'm supposed to say something, and the woman says, "Now hold up, chief." Da 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 da. And I'm supposed to say, "Okay, sister. All right, sister. All right, goddess. All right, queen. You right. This isn't that. This isn't that. If I'm telling you something, I know what I'm saying. I don't open my mouth unless I know what I'm talking about. And I know a lot of you are not used to that, you know, but that's what this is. And if you can't see that this is a different frequency than what you're used to, then something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with you. All right. So just kind of think about that. That's again that suppression. No, you don't suppress yourself to balance things out. Just like I'm not going to become less than a man to make you feel comfortable. If I'm right, and I know I'm right, I mean, there's no, we're beyond opinion. I think I'm right, or this is my truth, or this is my, we're so far beyond that at this point. I surpassed that place when I was like 15, talking from opinion. We're so far beyond that if you can't see that at this point, then it's you. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's just something to think about. You know, I'm never going to suppress the trueness of what I am, and I would never suggest that you do that. So if you get in this situation, and I'm answering this question, and you feel like you have to suppress your emotion to balance something out, then you're in the wrong place. You want to be unleashed, and unleashing doesn't mean a lack of emotional control. I know some people think that they want to act as stupid as they want, and then when you say, "Wait a minute, you can't do that here," they say, "Oh, you won't let me be free." No, I'm not going to let you be destructive and disorderly. There's a difference, you know. So, but you don't want to dumb yourself down for anything or anyone. I'm not going to do it. So when in doubt, emulate your instructor, you know. And if you feel like your instructor is giving you something that's beneath you and your understanding is beyond, then that person is no longer qualified to be your instructor. You got to find a new one. That's all. And hopefully you're right and you're not just being foolish, which 98% of the time, in my experience, the person is just being foolish because they're addicted to certain destructive patterns in their thinking. They're addicted to their ego, you know, and so, a lot of times people feel like they're beyond criticism. They're beyond critique. They're beyond correction. So the second part of the question, Chief, when starting with a quote unquote broken Ori, are you not starting with belief? No. You know, when you have an Ori that's not as strong, or like we say, a bad Ori per se, it's usually said in the tradition. When you have an Ori that has problems, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to start with belief, but it may mean that maybe your destiny or the path that's in front of you is rockier. You know, you can have a bad Ori per se, which some may equate to like bad misfortune, like bad luck. But you may be a person of good character, or developing or learning to have good character. You see, so the choices you make in the character that you have, you know, are going to determine the quality of your head, or the quality of your destiny, the quality of your consciousness, or the quality of your Ori. You see, so no, if you have a quote unquote bad Ori, it doesn't mean that now you're functioning from belief. Like I broke down already, the belief thing. Belief we use as children because we haven't been impregnated with knowledge. It's real simple. It's real simple. You know, and I know you sisters came back with it, but no, we need belief. I would bet $5,000 right now. Those of you who came back with that don't even know what the word means. You know, I bet. I already know. You don't even know what the word means. You just don't like the idea of someone saying we're going to remove that from our vocabulary, because just like there are certain things, just like when sometimes we come into consciousness and someone says, well, listen, this is not a religious thing. People will say, and I've had this happen. Well, I went through a bad time in my life. I remember there was a sister I used to work with years ago who was a cancer survivor, young sister too. You know, I don't even know if she was 30 yet, but she was like, well, Jesus got me through this, you know. So, you know, she was dealing with Santeria, and I was training her and teaching her. And she was like, I'm not giving up my Jesus, because it was Jesus who, you know, cured me of cancer. So then what can I really tell you at that point? What can I really tell you? You know, so a lot of times we're holding on to these addictive things. We don't want to really hear what got us through things, or when we have certain cravings, we don't want to hear why we have certain cravings. Certain times you may want cucumber, or may want watermelon, and you thinking it's the cucumber and the watermelon. You don't understand. No, you're just dehydrated. Your body's craving for water. You know, so sometimes we may do certain things, you know, even from a religious perspective, and we'll attribute our advancement or our growth or our fortune to what we did without realizing, no, it had nothing to do with that. You know, but maybe you just put yourself in a space of positive thinking. You know, but you haven't learned about the laws of attraction yet, but you did learn about Jesus or whatever, you know. So a lot of times it's very difficult in that sense when we're holding on to those ideas, and someone says, okay, well, let me break down to you what belief is, and then the person says, oh no, I ain't getting rid of that. All right, well, don't. Or like this sister was like, I ain't getting rid of Jesus. She wore a cross and everything. All right, well, keep your Jesus. You know, that's on you. You know, and I'm not here to tell you, you know, what you can and cannot do, but I can clearly see the things that are going to keep you stuck. You know, again, when you're functioning from belief and not functioning from awareness. You know, and when you have the opportunity to be impregnated with knowledge, when you're blocking that and stopping that because you have belief, that's just childish. And you'll find that when you're in an environment like that, or dealing with individuals like that, their responses are always going to be childish. At some point, you're going to feel like you're talking to a child, you know, a bratty child that nobody wants to be around. Those are the worst ones. So the other part of that question, you know, was until you are truly balanced with your ori and have knowledge. So, okay, so that was the full thing. So the person was saying, and I think this was IAmDevine. Chief, when starting with a broken ori, are you not starting with belief until you are truly balanced with your ori and have knowledge? Mm-mm. So a bad ori, you know, as I explained, has nothing to do with that per se. Um, and when you say something like, and you're truly balanced with your ori is you. So it's not really an instance. It's not really a thing about being balanced. It's a thing about being connected and being aware. You know, connecting yourself and putting your awareness um, into that ori and then down. It's about really completing that circuit and that chain, but not so much, you know, balancing it with something else per se. The ori is the seed, it's the kernel that sends everything out forward. You know, knowledge comes, you know, through different ways. Like we speak about the authority of your family, which would be your father, you know, and then at some point you would connect yourself to a masculine energy. You see, but it doesn't mean that belief is not inherently bad, but there's a stage and there's a time for it. Just like dreams are not inherently bad, but there's a stage and there's a time for it. As we develop and we grow and we actualize, you'll find a couple of things. Number one, your dreams become more lucid. And the other aspect is not only do your dreams become more lucid, but you know, your dreams begin to become prophecies and visions. You see, so there's a time for things, and when we lack development, you know, we need certain things to get us through. You know, just like until we have knowledge of things, we hope a lot because we're anxious about things. I hope I get this. I hope this happens. I hope that happens. Until we learn a little bit more about the cycles of life. You know, we may go through a bad time in life, right? And as young people, you know, and we say, I hope my life gets better, but you may be 8 years old. Now, when you're 28 or 38, you start to understand that, well, no, life does get better. Like, yeah, you go through bad times, you feel bad, you know. Like I had to tell someone recently about that with a breakup. Sister's going through a breakup. I said, she was all destroyed. I said, all right, you're going to feel bad for a little while. In about a year or so, you're going to feel better. That's it. You know, have you ever been through this before? You know, that's how it goes. You know, now sometimes you have those situations where a part of you is carved out for a very long time, and you don't recover for a very long time. And a lot of times because you become addicted to not recovering. You become addicted to the idea of your journey being one of misery and victimhood. But in most normal instances, you know, You're gonna be hurt for a while, and you'll feel better, like any other pain. So you don't need hope at that point. You see, you just need knowledge. It's like when you're healing from something. You may look in the mirror every day. Maybe you have a scar or something. You see every day, okay, it starts to itch. Okay, good. Once it's itching, it's healing. You see the color of it change and the puffiness or whatever it is. So you can rest assured that every day that goes by, I'm going to be better. It's going to get more healed. So it's the same thing in anything else. So you don't need to believe or hope that you will feel better, or believe or hope that you will be healed, because you know a little bit more about life's processes. And that comes as you mature. You could believe in God. You could believe in yourself. You can do all those little things like that you did it when you were a child. But I guarantee you, people who believe in themselves don't even know themselves. People who believe in God don't know what a God is. So they have to substitute it with belief. It has to become almost fanatical in a sense, even if it's a quiet fanaticism. I believe in myself. You just ask them a question. Well, what is yourself? What are you? What are they going to say? You already know. Me. I'm me. Right. They're going to give you a fake answer like that. What is the self? Because if you understood what the self is, you would understand more how the self operates. You wouldn't need to believe in anything. You could use certain metaphysical laws to enact the greatest powers of the self instead of sitting here believing. You wouldn't have to believe in God. Or one would say, and I'm trying to remember the example the sister gave. I hardly remember it. I once I read it, I was like, okay, she's still on that. Whatever. I just went to the next thing. But it was something like somebody finds money in the street, and the second, I don't know, it was something, I don't remember. But you may pray for money, let's say, right? You pray to God for money. And then tomorrow somebody gives you some money because you believed in God. And you say, well, I believe God's going to give me the money. And then you get the money. Well, if you don't understand the mechanics of prayer, and you don't understand the mechanics of belief or actualization or positive visualization, then you're going to be attributing the wrong things to whatever happened. You see, like you got people who sing in church about how far God has brought them. The Lord has brought me this far. How far? Where are you? Have you studied your history? That would be important. You hear that a lot in the black churches. Well, the Lord has brought us this far. Oh, brought us this far that, we invented reading and now most of us can't read. That's how far we got brought. That we built, some of the greatest temples and monuments on the planet, and most of our men don't even know how to build a doghouse. That's how far we've been brought. So and I'm not trying to discredit any of the accomplishments of our people or anything like that, but I'm just saying that sometimes we don't really dissect and think about what it is that we're saying and the value of it. And maybe that's not for everyone to do. Maybe some people need to stay in a certain space, but then that means you have to learn to be submissive to those who have done that. It's like times when maybe I've had conversations around food with people, and they've tried to, people who eat wrong, they got a hamburger in their hand, from a fast food restaurant, and they're trying to tell me, well, listen, man, we're all gonna go, one way or another, man. It doesn't matter. This, that. You're not qualified to argue about this with a McDonald's hamburger in your hand. Like, you can't talk about this. Like, you can't recognize that you're in the presence of something else, man. Like, so you have to take a back seat. Just like there's times, the first time I went to the continent, a good brother of mine gave me some guidance, and I deferred to him on everything, like things, opportunities that were coming my way and things like that. And I would say, well, what do you want me to do? And the brother's only got me by a couple of years, but he was going to the continent way longer than I was, so he knew the ins and outs way better than I did. Even though at the time I was really studying African tradition You know, he was a Rasta at the time, but I was studying the traditions way more than he was. But in that environment, he was the senior. So I knew just to keep my mouth shut, and whatever he told me to do, I had to submit to his experience and his knowledge until I got my own weight up. You know, sometimes we don't know how to do that because we have no sense of corporate togetherness, a hierarchy, anything like that, and we haven't actually gone through any real processes ourselves. We haven't gone through the burn ourselves. You see, going back again to the first question, we don't listen, we don't communicate. You know, as soon as someone speaks, we have something to say immediately right after. We ain't even listening to what they're saying. We don't communicate well with people. We get stuck in, we hold on to one idea, one notion, whether it's healthy for us or not, and we don't want to let go. And as a result, we perish. We dissolve. You know, our thinking patterns become corrosive to us. You know, they become corrosive. So yeah, you know, the broken Ori thing, and we don't usually say broken Ori per se. I mean, I guess it's not problematic, but you know, more so like, you know, Ori. You know, what we're saying is basically a path. Some people's paths are different, and some people's roads are harder than others. You know, and we choose the harder road sometimes. You know, because if we invest in healthy ways of being, that harder road will bring out greater character and greater progress in us. And in some people's roads don't require so much, you know. But either way, character is still necessary to either maintain, you know, a great destiny or to create a great destiny. Either way, you still have to develop and invest in character. So, do we use belief before we have knowledge? As children, yeah, as children, you know, there's a lot of hope and belief. I hope mommy comes back in here with some food. You know, we don't understand the way the faucet works yet, so we hope water comes out of it. We believe water will come out of it, but we don't know that there's already water in the faucet. We're just releasing it when we turn the handle, you know, things like that. So yeah, there is a time for it, but it has very little to do with the development of your consciousness. You know, yeah, it has very little to do with that. Again, that rough Ori means, you know, some people come out, and some children, they come out, they're a little rotten. You know, they come out lazy, or they come out stingy or greedy. You know, they have all of these different maybe character challenges that need to be dealt with. That would be, you know, an example of maybe a bad Ori. So, you know, when those children come out, you have to put maybe extra work into them. You know, you have to kind of really work with them to get them aligned with their better self or with their true self. You see, and their true self may be some of those characteristics, but you find out what their destiny is, so that those characteristics don't become harmful and mutinous to the community and the village that they live inside of. You know, that you find, well, this is why you're this way. You know, this is what we needed. This is what we called for. You see, so there's so many different things that go. Remember, the Ori is a container. So when we look at the Ori, a lot of times we don't realize that it's just a container for destiny, for consciousness, you know, for environment, you know, for power, for connection. So it's just like the calabash, as we say in our Yoruba tradition. The calabash represents the universe, but it also represents the head. So what are all the things that are contained in the universe, right? Well, it's all the things that are contained in the head. You know, some people come out and they have good thinking, they got a good head on their shoulders, they got a good mind, and others have to develop that. You know, it's not always a natural and instinctual thing for everyone. For some, it needs to be developed. All right, so that's the idea there. You know, the main question I wanted to get into, which I think I answered, was where are the first steps that we take, you know, as it relates to bringing children into consciousness. And like I said, it depends. There are no definitive first steps. And I will reiterate, anybody who tells you there are either does not know what they're talking about or they're lying to you. It could be either one, you know, nowadays, who knows? But there are no definitive first steps to consciousness. Where do you start? Where do you get in? Get in where you get in. Just put your foot in the water. What side of the pool do I start at? Or for some, the deep, for some, the shallow. It depends on your personality. You see, some go to the side of the pool. You know, it depends on your personality. So, you just want to find good instructors that will put you in a good room. That's all. Just get me in a good room. I'll take it from there. That's really the key. So, with any type of instruction or any type of training, like I said, you just want to make sure that it's circular in a sense where we're in that you're not being gridded off and partitioned off, and your mind is not being marginalized, where you have to think like this. This is what you have to think. These are the conclusions that you have to come to. You know, you don't want that type of experience. Like I said, even if I'm talking to a student, I teach them something and they come back with the same dumb thing, I just stop talking. I'm not going to argue with you. It's your prerogative if you want to hold on to a notion that I know undoubtedly is not going to work for you, but that's where you're starting. Maybe where you want to start is struggle. Maybe where you want to start is hard-headedness. You know, maybe that's going to be your path. Okay. You know, we all have different paths to greatness, and you don't want to, you know, you don't want to become like a, I don't want to use that word. Yeah, what the hell? I'll use that word. You don't want to become like a conscious Nazi. You know, where you're looking for that conformity across the board. You don't want to do that. You know, everyone has a different color that they're gonna project, they're gonna come with, and you want to allow for that to happen. And everyone has their own struggles and their walls that they need to break through. You see, everybody has that, their own inner walls that they have to. They are, you know, everybody's matrix looks different. Everybody's software programming looks different inside of them. And some people may be stuck on certain things, but you tell the truth and you keep it moving. You know, you don't need to argue anything, especially if you know what you're talking about. And you can clearly see they don't, because a lot of times, sometimes the disagreement is symptomatic of something else that's going on inside of them. It has nothing to do with what you're actually talking about. You know, that's why you'll hear me say sometimes, like, yeah, you've been trained to not respect black men. And you might say, what's it got to do with anything? It's got a lot to do with it. So sometimes your behavior is symptomatic of that. When I talk, it's always debatable. Anything I say is debatable. And I can laugh at it because it's funny to me because it's almost comical. It's almost like watching Keystone Capers, you know, or just like, you know, Laurel and Hardy. It's like, it just becomes comedic. You know, it's like, you really going to keep banging your head in that wall? After a while, it becomes comedy. Like, you really going to keep making this mistake after it's been broken down to you so well. You're going to keep making that mistake? You know, now it's funny at this point. Now it's not even sad anymore. It's just funny, you know. So, and I know for some it may not be, but you know, we all have our own journey, and only Ron knows what we've each been through. You know, so to be able to laugh about some of the things at one point in our lives maybe would have enraged us is progress, because that allows us to keep a coolness about us, so we can actually be effective. You know. All right. Okay. Oh, that was you, Gina Lacey. I thought so. She said, thank you, Chief, for clarification on the Ori. It was my question on the broken Ori. Okay, cool. I knew it was either you or IAmDevine. I wasn't sure. And Brother Charlambo says, in Hebrew and Arabic, the word for belief is amin and aman, you know, meaning standing with weapons in the hand, very similar to the image of Amun and Kemet. I'm grateful for your further explanation of belief. You're more than welcome, brother. More than welcome. All right. And it goes deeper. You know, why would we have those words? What a belief, what an imagination, what a hope, you know, but you got to understand that. I'm going to get ready to get out of here, but your language creates the framework for your reality. So all I got to do is give you a garbage word, and that garbage word is going to create a garbage reality. And you may have grown up with that word. And so it's very difficult to scrape it from you. But sometimes you got to look at, you know, who gave you the language? See, we'll rail and we'll speak against Christians all day. Why? Because you were given that Bible by your slave maker. You know, people say slave master, but I don't say that. Slave maker. Because you make a slave. You don't master a slave, because people are not born slaves and then you just learn to master them. You make them. So you're given that by your slave maker. Well, didn't they also give you a language? Didn't they also give you dietary practices? They even gave you sexual practices and reproductive practices. Are you examining all of those different things? The very garments that you wear. Are you scrutinizing all of those things with the same level of critical eye and vehement disdain, for the entire process? Or are you just singling things out that are convenient for you? You've been given a language the same way you was given Jesus. Come on, man. And it's one of the weakest languages on the planet. So that right there should tell you something. So if I show you a word and we say, well, we use this word, and I say, nah, that's not a good word. It's no different than me saying, well, listen, they taught you to eat pork and this and that. You don't really do that. It's no different. They gave you this food tree pyramid full of death, all these dead foods and cow pus and yellow cheese, even though milk comes out white. Well, kind of white, but cheese is yellow, and all this steak you're supposed to eat and all this stuff that kills you. And it's okay for us to look at that and say, well, maybe that wasn't really the best thing. Or there's some words and concepts that we've been given too that also were not the best thing. They were used to keep us enslaved. It's no different. So yeah, as spiritual warriors, we got to pull out those machetes, or maybe it might not be a machete, it might be pencils. It might be pencils and pens. But we have to pull them out, or red highlighters, and say, we greet each other, we say hello. What is that? We say good morning, good night, good evening. In the Caribbean, hello, good night. At nighttime, hello, good night. But we have all these different things that we do that maybe conceptually were part of the process of making a slave. They were part of the process. So, and we've developed addictions around them, just like some of us have soul food addictions. Soul food, right? Come on, kills the body. You got the soul left over. So we've developed addictions around that, or addictions around certain kind of language, or addictions around religion. That's why sometimes even with our conscious teachers, we want them to be preachers. Or the ones who perpetuate themselves to the teachers know that I can psychologically present myself as a preacher and people will get with me. If I'm big and rotundous, and I crack some jokes and I get excited and pretend like I'm real angry, all those different things, and I'll ask for money afterwards. Takes people right back to church. So these words and these ideas and these concepts, and we have to look at them with a certain level of scrutiny. And then even when we talk about where do we begin in consciousness, the idea of where do I begin only comes because we're so used to religion, which gives us first steps. Get down on your knees, confess Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, or take your shahada. Different things like that. So we're given those first steps, but those are first steps into programming, not first steps into freedom. How do we get free? Well, what's your current prison? I don't know your prison. We all have different prisons that we got to break out of. So I may tell you to turn left. You're welcome, Glenda Holder. You needed it. I might tell you to turn left, but you're really supposed to turn right based on the formation and the format of your prison. We all have different prisons, man. Your hang-ups or your vices are not my hang-ups and vices. And the same thing with your children, man. We all have our children are dynamic beings, man. They're dynamic, and they all come with their own karmic path that they have to play out. They all come with that. And we have to respect that. And like I said, my suggestion, start with communication. It's one of the greatest things you could do to show respect to a person, man. Listen to them. Doesn't matter the age, whether they're 90 years old or 9 years old, listen to them. And sometimes with children, they communicate most when they're most blissful, which sometimes is when they're most depleting. You know, when they're just running around and hanging on things and beating on things and breaking things. You know, then you can say, "Why would you do that?" Because I wanted to. Because why'd you break that stick? I wanted to see what it was like to break it. You know, be honest in that moment. You know, you catch them another time. Why'd you break that stick? Huh? And they do that stare, that glazed over stare, hoping that you just let it go. Huh? You know, so man, communicate. That's something I can tell you. Communicate, feed them properly. You know, whether it's raw food, eating regimen, or it's vegetarian regimen, or you know, whatever it is that works well for you. You know, some people do work better with meat. You know, whatever it is, but eat right, man. Increase the physicality and understand that your development happens on all planes at the same time. You can't just grow your mind and then your body be shabby. You can't just grow your body and then your soul or your spirit. You know, it's not connected. It doesn't work that way. Everything has to move forward together. And once you get a sense of that everything is moving forward together, then it will help you to better sit back and look at your youth and say, maybe I do need to develop a regimen. You know, maybe I need to look at all of these different areas and then find out, like almost go with a clipboard, you know, to each child and almost kind of like interview them. You know, that's really what this is, man. And you know what? Hey, let me tell you this. You know, this is what women do. This is not men's work. And notice it was the woman who asked. This is woman. The same way as men, we have to do that for our women. You know, women I deal with have schedules that I write up, calendar schedule, all of that. Because a lot of times they come and they want to do certain things and they can't figure out how to get things started. And it's not, I sit down, I listen. Okay, what is it trying to do? All right, well, let's come up with a schedule to boom. And maybe they want to, you know, like I said, I have certain rules about, you know, how you work, you know. So, okay, we're going to work on that, this and that. Mothers, you got to do the same thing for your children. You see, this is woman's work. This is woman's work. You know, when you sit back and you know, you kind of look at the domain, your queendom is your children. They exist inside of your personal queendom. It doesn't mean that the father shouldn't have input or anything like that. But like I said, the father will present the strategy and the mother will provide the tactics. You know, so the father, the strategy says, I want my children to be consciously aware so that they can, you know, continue our legacy, or, you know, da 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 da. And the mother will say, okay, well, this is how we're going to do it. You see, now in order to do the this is how we're going to do it part, you have to talk to them. You have to listen to them. You have to communicate with them in order to do that. You see, that's your part. That empathetic link, you know, that sensitivity. Women have way more sensitivity to their children than they have to their men. That's something you brothers need to understand. You know, sometimes brothers get jealous when they see, you know, love between mother and child. Nothing, you know, I'm talking about a woman who's balanced, because not all mothers are loving. So just understand that I'm speaking generally, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you all have this. Some of you have to develop it, just like not every man has a plan. You know, some of those qualities and traits need to be developed in them. Not all men are men. Some are males. Not all women are women. Some are females. They're just adults, you know. But honestly, this is really the woman's domain when we're talking about the children piece or the child piece. Now, she may refer to her maid and say, what do you think about, you know, little so-and-so, Tariq? You know, you think Tariq would be a good, you know, father may get some input or whatever, but, you know, the mother has her ear to the ground. You know, she has her ear to the playground. You know, she knows what's really, you know, going on with those youth like that. You know, so it's going to require that level of interviewing, communicating, and observing, and not always trying to push your youth into a certain position based on what you need and want conveniently. You know, based on your own personal convenience. You see, yeah, woman's work. You remember the umbrella model that I gave to you guys. The man covers the woman and the children, but his direct linkage of coverage is the woman covers the children. You see, so her domain and her purview becomes those youth in that sense, you know. But the man is providing with the authoritative leading orders, you know, the stratagem, and she's providing the tactics for those youth, just like he's providing the tactics for her development. Yeah. All right, so I'm out of here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Peace to all of you in the chat. I see we got a lot of folks coming on through and you know, sharing time. And willfully, you learned something. Willfully, something that was keeping your cage glued shut has been melted. And now you can open it and walk through it willfully. All right. But until such time, I'll be back here tomorrow at 1. All right. And we'll kick the Willy Bobo then. Until such time, this is Chief Yuya signing out. Peace.